first, let me just say, let me welcome you. I'm curious, how many people, is this their first Virtual Edge? Wow. How many people is this an extension from the PCMA conference? Fantastic. And how many people have never done a virtual event? Raise your hands high. It's not, you don't have to be embarrassed. We just want to make sure we're saying, okay, and how many people have done between 1 to 5? Okay, terrific. It gives us kind of an idea of how we want to move forward with it. So what we're going to talk about today is team. Well, first, let me just welcome everyone here in the physical space, in these 4 walls where we have atoms and a lot of good stuff, all the face-to-face, which is considered the apex of communication, things that we're used to and more comfortable with. And I also want to tip my hat to everyone out in the ether, in the virtual space that's watching. Thank you very much. We will make sure and acknowledge you. We have a couple speakers besides myself today. One is remote. We'll introduce ourselves in a second. I just want to basically say that we're going to be talking about teams. You know, what is a digital team? Should I outsource? Should I partner? What's the makeup of that team? And what we want to do is we're going to give, we want you to walk away. It's part art and part science, right? So what we want to do is have you walk away kind of directionally correct and mostly right. So, you know, mostly right meaning it's going to depend on what your individual situation is, but we want to give you some advice from people who are actually doing this, but also some tools to use to start benchmarking where you are and where you want to go. And if we can accomplish that, then I think you guys can walk out of here with a great information. It's a great way to kick off the rest of the 2 days. So you can see here on the slide, there's, you know, the concept of team is that there's a whole bunch of people who do certain things, and there's certain things that are unique to the digital space. But the goal is whether you partner with another company or you build it in-house, you're going to work as an ecosystem. So, you know, it's nice to have someone with a lot of muscles and someone that's got a lot of flames or, you know, good stomach muscles there, especially when the internet goes down and you have to go to your exception handling plan. The point is that Barb and Phil and myself, we're going to talk about how to build that composition. What are the things that are necessary for your digital team for virtual and hybrid events? Okay? So I think what we'll do is, let's just start with introducing ourselves. Barb is here, and she'll introduce herself. She's obviously physically here. And then we have Phil, who is remote in California. He's on the phone. There's no video, so you won't see him, but he'll be an active part of the day. So go ahead, Barb.
Good morning. Welcome. I'm Barb DeMaria. I'm Director of Operations and Live Events for StayMates Business Media. We provide highly targeted marketing opportunities online, in print, and face-to-face. I'm happy to be here, and I'm happy to talk about how we built our digital team and how our first kickoff virtual event went. So, thank you for having me.
Thank you. Phil from California, why don't you introduce yourself? Welcome.
Good morning. Phil Toomey from Intel. I am the Virtual Event Program Services Integration Architect. Work for IT, make sure that virtual events work inside and outside of the company. You know about Intel. We make semiconductors and the brains of many computers. Have about 85,000 plus employees and probably another extended 40 or 50,000 partners that we provide IT services to to enable the business. Virtual events is a new offering, and I kind of grease the wheels, make sure that things function as needed. Anyway, I will be talking a little bit about Intel's involvement with virtual events, from producing one-off events to getting into the business of producing many events. We're right now, this program is looking at doing 40 to 100 events in the next 12 months, and we expect that there are as many as 500 or 1,000 events that we could produce in a year. So we're building our own program to do that using externally provided platforms. Take it away, Kenny.
All right, thanks. So my name is Kenny Lauer. I'm the Vice President of Digital Experience for George P. Johnson. For those of you who don't know George P. Johnson, we are a global marketing agency, and we build experiences, both physical experiences, virtual and hybrid. I'm responsible for threading digital through those experiences. So whether that's virtual experiences, social media, any sort of remote engagement, that's kind of where I get to play. So I would be kind of, in this conversation, representing a company where you might go to get help on how to build a strategy and execution around a virtual event. Okay, so we started a little bit late, so I'm going to go through the next couple slides quickly, because what's really important to us is that you guys ask the questions that you want. We just want to give you a little bit of grounding, especially if you're new to virtual events. So 3 things. I've spoken at all three virtual edges, and I continue to say this every single time, as Gertrude Stein also said, an event is an event is an event. And what I mean by that is that when you think of virtual events, don't diminish what it takes to put on a successful event. It still requires definition and discovery and development and delivery, all the same sorts of things you would do in a physical event. Now, as we're moving to hybrid, which is virtual and physical universes combining, it becomes even more important to go through the process. You can see that the standard process, one that we might use, which is understand who your audience is, understand what the outcomes are, and then build a strategy for that. Have the right people on the team to be able to do that before you look at technology. And I know virtual events, we always want to jump to the technology platform. You know, Barb, Phil, and I have talked a lot about this. But it's really important to do the upfront stuff and have people on your team to do this. Because then, once you understand the strategy, then you pick the technology that's going to help deliver on the strategy to deliver the outcomes for the audience. And then, of course, you execute. Very similar to physical events. Number 2. We're now moving from atoms to bits, right? We're now moving from things that happen linearly to things that you can hyperlink around and you can experience them when you want. Different roles on a team are required for this. You need to look at how do you engage remotely. I mean, you got all these people out there, engaging in your content. How do you keep them active? How do you gain the kind of information? How do you drive the right kind of behavior? You need to have someone on your team that understands that. Also, consumption. People are consuming content remotely. How does one consume content? Through a video, through chat, through text messaging, and if your event does go outside the U.S. borders, how does different cultures and geographies consume that same sort of information? And then number 3, we're still going to do goals and strategy and execution. We're going to talk a little bit about outsourcing here and partnering, but the one thing I think, well, I know the 3 of us and anyone who's done a virtual event will believe in is that you outsource the platform. Don't try to build a platform in-house. Platform becomes a critical element to the event, obviously. And these guys, and they're all here, and many of you in the virtual space are, well, clearly you're on one of them now, know that they're designed for scalability, they're designed for execution, they have whole teams designed for that. I've been involved with developing platforms, I've seen companies try to develop platforms, just take my word for it. That's the one thing you want to outsource. Now, how you work with that team, that's something that we'll talk about in a second. So those are the top 3 things that we kind of wanted to set the goals for right now. So now let's kind of give them some information based on some of our experience, Phil and Barb. So Barb, you have you have chosen to build a team in-house.
Correct.
Maybe you can give us a little idea of why you decided to do it that way, and what does the composition of that team look like, and what kind of events you do that team supports.
Well, I tell you, we have more than 5 years experience with webcasts and face-to-face events, and we do have an in-house team already. However, we did have to add a couple part-time positions. So Kenny is exactly right. Take time with your strategy, your business plan, and then choose your vendor. I knew in the back of my mind when we chose our vendor that we wanted to self-provision, and we wanted to build our virtual environment, and we had the team to build that. And we were all very passionate about it, and I'm going to try to put 5 months of building this environment and the team into about 10 minutes. So, but we liked the vision, we wanted to live the vision, so we started off with building the team. Our creative designer was an integral part in the team. There's a tremendous amount of images that need to be created, logos need to be created, new print ads, new online ads, and specs within the environment. We built the environment and the microsites ourselves, and all those images, of course, are not just one size, they're different sizes. So the designer was an integral part in providing those specs. But more importantly is what we did for her was I provided a project plan for her as well, amongst the big project plan. And it was very easy for her to go into the project and say, I need a microsite logo, or I need a center graphic, I need to customize a background. And which brings up another point is we did a lot of customizations. They provided really good templates, but we wanted to make it our own. So she did provide custom backgrounds in the booth, and in the main hall we used the Jumbotron to do some audience engagement. So there was a lot of integral parts of the designer. So if you have any questions after, please let me know. The website producer. They created all of the landing pages for us, and because we had to put we wanted to, for marketing purposes, put all of our information on our landing page as well. We chose to drive everyone to our landing page depending on the promotional invitation, or to go directly to the microsite. So the website producer was an integral part, and they also created our email templates for us and was responsible for the HTML coding that went along with that. The editorial staff, integral, content is king. When we first introduced this, the chief editor said, you know, it's like webcasting, but there's 5 events in one day. There's 5 sessions in one day. So that made it a little bit different than the one-off webcasting. So what they had to do is we sent out a survey, obviously, to our audience, and asking them what the topics that they were interested in. Then they would go and research presenters, and it's different talking to presenters on the deliverability. It's a virtual engagement. It's a virtual event. So this is how, you know, you will present, and you'll go to rehearsals and things like that. So, and then afterwards we went to the networking lounge for 30 minutes. We redirected our attendees and went to the networking lounge for 30 minutes, and the presenter followed as well for additional follow-up questions. So the chief content director is an integral part as well, and I think it was a little bit more time consuming in what they thought at the beginning. Video producer, we did have a part-time video producer, or we do on staff. I think videos are very compelling, and when you can use videos, use videos. We created our in-house videos in the networking lounge, in the Jumbotrons, either a branding video or a video to engage the audience. We also have the walk-on video in the main hall That was a little bit more challenging in trying to get the transparent background to work, but we use the video when you can. It's very compelling, and folks do watch the videos. Our statistics, they really enjoy the videos. A lot of them are invoked automatically, but you know, some do. You need to press the arrow to invoke the video. But the copywriter is a little bit different. Again, learning what is your audience about, and it's different copy from a face-to-face or a webcast. So what we did is we had someone from the audience marketing department raise her hand because she is aware she's been with the company for 15 years. She actually wrote the copy. She wrote the copy for the landing page and the copy for the microsite. So learn your copywriting and how you market and how you set it up on the websites, your microsites, and within the environment, because it is a different type of copy. Customer service coordinator. One of the questions was, when did you learn to call for help? Well, about 3 months prior to the event, I raised my hand and said, we need someone to communicate and to provide customer service for our exhibitors. Building the booths, we wanted to assist our sponsors and our exhibitors in maximizing their assets. You know, you tell the sponsor, sure, here's your booth, this is what it'll look like, but we provided an inventory spreadsheet. This is what you need, this is what you have already. Maximize your assets, and we'll be here to help you, and we'll actually do it for you if you choose. So that was an integral part as well. Marketing project manager, just to manage all the marketing. The invitationals, the invitations to the virtual events, the reminders. The reminders is automatically invoked from the platform, but to manage that, to program it, and to write the correct message was important also. Then the project manager, that was me. And actually what I did is I worked very closely once we chose our vendor. They provide a skeleton project or a project timeline and tasks and things. That's not really what we needed. We needed a huge detailed project plan for every position and a timeline of how we were going to execute the project. That was important as well. So I created that whole project plan and assured that everything was running smoothly in the timeline. And why we chose to self-provision and to create our own virtual environment was because it was so easy. It was so easy to upload images. When the designer would make the image, I would go to the environment. I also created the whole entire environment and all the microsites myself. And I'll tell you the reason, and I'll get back to uploading, is I wanted to live the how to build the virtual environment myself. And then the next event, I could communicate and I could understand the positions when I handed it off to the producer on what it really takes to build a virtual event. And it's a lot of work. But anyway, going back to why we self-produced ours, the images are easy to upload. I tell you, we'd take our image, upload it in the microsite, in the environment, and you know what? It was there instantly instead of outsourcing to a specific vendor, and it may take a week or week and a half to see your image. We could make decisions on the fly. You know, gosh, that image just isn't right. So let's do something different. You could see instant results. And building the environment was much more timely. It was just really easy. And plus we did have the experience on our team. I had the experience. I wasn't afraid of it. I just had a passion. It was really fun. a lot of work? It was. But the next event within the environment, the infrastructure is all built for you. So the next event will be easier, less time consuming, now that the VEC is ready to go. So
thanks Barb. That's great.
Thank you.
Phil, I'd be curious about your opinion on staffing and how Intel is doing it, as well as, we might have people here that are looking at doing different types of events, and how might different types of events affect the way you staff a team for success?
Sure. Let me talk a little bit about the spectrum of event sort of scales that we're supporting. On Monday this week, we had a recruiting event in Israel, which was local in nature. A couple hundred people showed up. Those kinds of events we kind of have turned into a cookie cutter activity where we basically clone and reproduce the event. That's not to say that there aren't a lot of marketing needs and preparation items that we have to do in advance, but they tend to be fairly simple in content and simple in structure, so we knock those out and do them pretty regularly these days. At the same time, we started producing our annual sales and marketing conference also on Monday, which has 6,000 people registered, and about 3,000 people have already arrived this week in sort of a precursor learning mode. We've got 130 course offerings there, working very closely with the vendor to provide some support. So we've staffed out, we've incremented our staff with vendor staff. So we've got 5 people from the vendor helping us produce that event, and I've got a dedicated team of about a dozen people who are either working on technical roles or on what I would call content wrangling. That is getting the content from the subject matter experts, and a variety of coordination tasks to get those 130 courses produced and either delivered in real time or delivered on demand. So that's kind of like the spectrum. In the middle, in between those, we have lots of what we call Tier 2 type activities that don't have such a huge scope or as, say, our sales and marketing conference that happen more regularly. We have product launches that are focused towards smaller communities of Intel customers. They may be OEM customers. They may be retail channel partners who sell our products in retail outlets in various forms. And so we have these smaller events that we do that are more frequent than something the size of our sales and marketing conference. We produce those, but we sort of keep our options open for engaging the vendor to provide incremental staff. So when we contracted with the vendor, we included it. If we need additional bodies, we'll give you lead time, and we'll make sure we have a discussion about how many additional, say, producers or technical consultants that we'll need to produce this particular event. Typically, we would go incremental, would include things like creative talent, things that we don't necessarily have a ready cast of people who might do special graphics, special 3D look graphics for us. Those would be there. We might ask for oversight on project management just to make sure that we don't miss anything big, especially when we have external and branding concerns, because there's obviously risk to our brand, and we want to make sure things come out correctly. Then moving down from those kinds of events, where we believe that 70 or even 80% of our business are many medium-sized internal events. which are anywhere from, we've got a global team that will be holding an event in 3 or 4 weeks here that has something like a couple of thousand employees, and they're doing sort of their annual, these are our new initiatives, these are our goals, much like what the Sales and Marketing Conference does, but it's aimed internally towards a group of people. That we will produce completely in-house with my cast of about 6, plus the subject matter experts from the organization who will provide most of the content and most of the creative ideas for how they want their event to run. So we have sort of a spectrum of activities. Once again, 70 to 80% we think are internal communications, learning type activities. 10-20% external customers and partners. So we see virtual events as providing us some capability that we couldn't do with just our basic our basic cast of tools that we had so previously. And most importantly, it gives us a way not only to reach people that we couldn't normally bring together, or we could only bring a small number together for budgetary reasons. It also gives us a way to glue people together. But the thing that I wanted to sort of add to Barb's comment about content being king, I believe there's something else here. I think content is king, but I think that context is really what it's all about at the end of the day. Virtual events could just be static websites, and I've seen some people take a path in that direction that makes them not very exciting or engaging. But because they have opportunities for interaction, because they have opportunities to engage people in real time, it changes the nature of consuming content. So our mission is to increase the engagement, increase the uptake, make the virtual experience more engaging, so that we get messages to people when it's important. We get the time to information is the right time. It's not 6 months late. So our approach to team is the reason that we decided to go into the event production business ourselves was to shorten the time frame for producing these events so we could produce more of them. And the vendors have been very helpful in doing that. So we have come up with kind of a model for staffing, depending on the size of the event, the nature of the event, the risk associated with producing that event, and in the tolerance for risk by the event producer or the event host or sponsor. Anyway, does that help, Kenny?
Yeah, and in fact, Phil, that's a great lead into the next thing we're going to talk about, which is, you've heard 2 folks that have worked to build some degree of in-house capabilities, and you may be thinking, well, should I do this? Is this something I need to build in-house and have a team of, 6 to 10, or how many are on your team, would you say?
About 8.
About 8?
About 8.
Or should we partner, and when should we do that? So what we wanted to do was give you, and you can see on the slide, give you a tool to help you think about the different things, and especially because many of you have not done a virtual event before, and some have done 1 to 5, and depending upon how much engagement. What you can see here is on the left side are the different disciplines, in a sense, that we think about when we start to have to make a decision on whether we're going to partner with an agency like GPJ, George P. Johnson, or someone else, or we're going to build it in-house like these folks have. And as you look across, there's a marble that, in a sense, we just move to where we align our business right now. And the bigger marbles are possibly heavier weighted, and we have said that strategy, format, and I'll run through these real quickly, are more heavily weighted than some of the other ones. But the strategy is to kind of mark your company where you are now and maybe where you want to go on this, to give you kind of a directionally correct approach. So strategy is, this specifically is strategy in how to build remote experiences. Do you have some or not? You know, you've heard from both of these folks that context, content, and engagement strategies are important. The format, is it going to be on demand? Is it going to be virtual only? Or is there going to be a physical component? Moving down, engagement. Are we going to have a lot of engagement or not? Is it going to be one broadcast to 20,000 people, or is it going to be a smaller engagement with a smaller event with a lot more engagement? Maybe text chat or video chat or some sort of one-to-one or one-to-many. Then we start looking at some of the corporate disciplines. What is the mindset in the corporation? Are we just, if it's not invented here, we don't want to do it. I mean, if that's important, then that's important. Let's not forget that. Is it core to the business or not core? That's the key question on whether you outsource or not. And then how are we on our risk tolerance? You know, are we willing to accept a lot of risk? Is my boss willing to accept a lot of risk? Is the company willing to accept a lot of risk? And that'll play in as well. And then the last two are just, what is your experience in doing events, which is why I asked at the beginning, and then geography, because if it's outside the U.S. borders, there's other things to think about. So what this might look like is, you know, if we said, okay, well, we don't have that much strategy. No, we're going to do a hybrid event. We're going to have a pretty significant amount of engagement, different sorts of maybe gaming mechanics. Doesn't really matter to us where we get it. It's not too core for our business. It's just a means to an end. Risk is not much of an issue. Well, we've done some events, and we're pretty comfortable with that, and it's going to be only in the U.S. And what would happen is this whole thing would kind of tilt a little bit toward partnering. And what you may find is as you move down the path that these marbles or these balls are going to move over to the right, and it's going to balance out. But again, these are all going to be very specific to you, but these are some of the major aspects that you will start listening to. And if you can remember these as you go through the next 2 days, you'll see a lot of things will come together, because each one of us could speak hours on each one of these. And we're more than willing to do that if you want to take us aside. So let's do this. I know we started a little bit late. We have about 10 minutes. What I'd like to do is see if there's any questions that anyone has that can be addressed to all of us or any of us specifically around team composition, around roles and responsibilities, about outsourcing or insourcing. Anybody have any ideas? We have a mic so that Phil can hear.
One comment to this slide, it was interesting because I just saw the slide a couple days ago, and so I'm like, Kenny, move all the balls to the right for me. And the teeter-totter just fell over, and I knew that we were all in-house. It was amazing, and this exercise is so beneficial for you to go ahead and do for your own company. And it really told us that I knew we were in the right direction, but this is an excellent exercise for you to go through.
Yeah, back in November of 2008 is kind of when all this virtual stuff, I would say specifically November, but 2008 was when it started, and we had people come to us that needed to move entire events from the physical to the virtual space, had no idea. So we spent a lot of time talking to folks like you who are thinking, wow, we need to do this, but where do we even begin? We didn't have tools like this. We kind of we were winging it. But now we do. And in fact, maybe one of the things, if we don't have a question, we talk a little bit about these platforms. The platforms that you're going to be hearing more about, they're all in the showcase area. You can go and experience it. But one of the questions I wanted to ask Phil that I wrote down here is, what is reasonable to expect of a platform and the team that they provide? What is reasonable, and how do you work with a team like that? What should be the expectation for these folks when they work with a platform team?
Great question, and one that I think all the vendors will tell you that I have challenged them at times. My own inclination is to, on the one hand, understand where this industry is coming from. There's a handful of significant vendors in the space, and there are a few who are trying to wedge themselves into the front pack. I have had the pleasure of working with all 5 of the leading vendors for virtual event platforms, and have enjoyed working with all of them. That said, their legacy has, most of them came from producing, they started out with a product that made it possible to produce a virtual trade show. And consequently, all the use cases that they will suggest or model for you are pretty much derivatives of a virtual trade show. And so one of the things that I continuously challenge them with is, hey, so let's talk about some different kinds of use cases. And several of them are doing things that they call a virtual briefing center, which does address a need that's sort of more of a living environment. It's not a one-time event environment. It lives for a longer period of time. The content may evolve over time. So they're doing that. I haven't seen, for example, a virtual poster fair, which might be more like an academic poster fair where people come and present their ideas, because they kind of are stuck in this trade show thing. Granted, that's mostly a graphical presentation problem, but it's something that for information sharing, say, for a professional association or for an internal purposes, might be really appropriate. I look for them to provide me leadership around things like gaming, which they're kind of stuck in. They've got one game that you go around and get content and tag booths and talk to people, and that's the one game they offer up. I think there's a lot more opportunities than that. Have made some suggestions. So I'm always asking the vendors, what other tricks do you know? And work with me on some new concepts. So on the one hand, learn from them. They've got a huge amount of good experience in the logistics of producing these events, and Barb will tell you, I will tell you, Ken will tell you, and the vendors will reconfirm that you can't go in lightly and think it's just a little tiny project list. It is a big production to do even a small event.
So Phil, would it be safe to say that you can really, that a lot of the technology platforms have created professional services and consulting because they have had to, because they need to sell their technology, and people come to them and say, how do I do it? So they do that. But in most cases, you should not count on their strategy group. In fact, they're more than willing to work with other strategy groups and outsource that to maximize the efficiency and the experience on the platform. They're really good at helping with risk assessment. If I do this versus this, what are the things that could happen? If I do this versus this, how much training does a presenter need? But in terms of looking at how do you create your communication strategy to get people to the event, how do you really work with engagement mechanics and game mechanics so that once people are there, they stay there and it's sticky, and you work with, that's not necessarily their expertise, and they'll be the first ones to say that. So I think the takeaway is don't count on them for strategy. Count on them for a very solid platform and the capabilities that exist within a technology platform.
And use every feature that they provide. The announcement pop-ups, the jumbotrons, the program, you can even manipulate some of that stuff if you choose to, but use all the features and then some. Don't miss out on any of the features that they provide. And I think Phil or Kenny had a great suggestion, is offer up recommendations to your vendor saying, we would really like to be the guinea pig for these folks, provide some suggestions on how to enhance their software, and that's what I would think that they would want us to do. So.
Yeah, you know your business. You know what it needs or what it could use, and you might even have some really creative ideas. So you do need to challenge them with, okay, so how would we do this? You know, I keep after them for new ways to do things that are more engaging. A good example being pulling in live Twitter feeds, say, into a booth, or live RSS feeds that would sort of update dynamically, so that not only is my booth full of static content and subject matter experts who can talk, it also has streams of content coming from possibly outside the environment through Twitter or RSS, from blogs or various other sources. So there's many things that you don't see examples of too much that could be done, but you have to kind of articulate it. In some cases, I've talked to vendors, and they didn't even know they had the capability, and we discovered that, yeah, it was already there, somebody thought of it, but they just weren't pitching it, and the people that I was talking to just didn't know that it was possible. So, yeah, don't assume they know their platforms as well as you know your business.
Yeah, I mean, you would never have, like, this venue would never, if you booked this for an event, they'd never say, okay, here's how you build strategy for your event. They're like, well, here's the space, here's the 4 walls, you know, go at it. And we don't have to be that deliberate about it, but I think we should think of it that way. That's what they're experts in. So we have just maybe 3 minutes, and what I'd like is to ask Phil and Barb if there was one thing that you would want these guys to take away from this, if there was only one thing that they remembered from this whole session, what would it be?
Gosh, one thing. I think Phil mentioned that an event, well, and you mentioned an event is an event is an event. This is a very large project. It really is. I would say go in, jump into the lake, feet first, and have fun. But you'll have your little floaties on. You're not going to sink. So get your team fired up about it. Engage your audience. And you're gonna do well, and have fun.
Phil?
I would say I would totally agree with Barb that you can just jump in, and you can jump in with the vendor holding your bike up, and they will do that very well. You can jump in with a partner like GPJ to hold your bike up and make sure you're successful. And do that a couple of times, but I absolutely encourage you, if you think that there's a rationale and a business strategy around doing more than 1 or 2 of these a year, think hard about going into self-production yourself and figuring out when you need the vendors, when you need the strategic partners, and when you can self-produce. You'll get a lot more bang for your buck, and you'll probably be more successful at meeting your business goals.
Great, Phil. And my parting words would just be, you know, as you start to dive into the space, there's a lot of people come at you. There's a lot of things you need to think about. Take some time to think about what you want as a company. What do you want to achieve? What behavior do you want to drive? And start to work on a strategy for that. And then once you understand that, then start to think about what technology and how you're going to execute it. It's really important that you start from a position of understanding your audience, knowing what outcomes you want, and building a strategy to deliver that. Even if that's just writing it in a paragraph. And then go to your team, go to a partner, and go to someone who can advise you on technology and execution, and that's a great place to start. Don't get overwhelmed. So we're all going to be available afterwards, but I want to thank you for attending, and all those out in the virtual space. Thank you for watching and engaging, and have a good rest of the show.